Hey everyone, I am Heidi Zuckerman and I am about to be joined by Matty, the most famous artist, and we are going to talk about Monolith Mania. Thanks so much for joining in. I appreciate the waves and the highs and the hearts. It lets people know that we're here, and I'm super excited about this conversation. If you guys have questions, you can send them. And here we go. Gonna add Matty. Okay. Let's see.
Hi,
Hi,
Heidi.
Heidi. Did you say anything yet? Oh, maybe it's my headphones. Okay.
Can you
Okay.
hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Hi.
Okay. Okay. Hey. All right, there we are. How's it going today?
I'm well. I just got back from a walk with my dog.
So weird. Okay. Again.
I'm well. I just got back from a walk with my dog.
Okay, good. Did you see any monoliths?
Uh, no, I'm seeing a beautiful sunset in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now, though.
Great. I'm seeing a beautiful sunset in the west also.
Well,
People
thanks
are
for
saying
having
no
me
audio,
on.
but they can. Okay.
Thank you for having me on. I love your podcast, and we've chatted briefly on Clubhouse. And I heard that you watched my unaired NBC interview yesterday, and that was kind of the
Yeah,
basis of you reaching out.
exactly. Yeah. So I should say we actually haven't ever seen each other, though, we have spent kind of hours on Clubhouse talking, and we have my brother in common. And I, like probably most people in the world, whether they care anything about art or not, have been following this monolith case, let's call it. And then I witnessed your insertion into all the dialogue around it. And it just made me smile. And I, love that art has a sense of humor and artists who have a sense of humor. And then your unaired, as you said, NBC interview yesterday was just so genius because you were, of course, like taking a kind of conceptual art stance, and you were having a conversation with someone who had no idea what you were talking about, and who was so interested in being kind of in control of the conversation and in control of the news cycle and in control in general. And one of the things I love about art is that it forces us into these places of uncomfortableness and allows us to kind of see how that feels. So I just kind of wanted to talk to you about your practice and also about the monoliths and all these different things. So thanks for saying yes.
Awesome.
Let's give a little bit of context. You've been referring to the most famous artists as a collective, and oh, I know someone's saying like Joe Rogan. I am not Joe Rogan, though I do have a podcast, and sometimes we're next to each other. So I'm glad that you said yes to me, and I still hope you get to do Joe Rogan, and I'm glad you said no to Fox, like um, you know, for me.
Yeah,
So.
you're up there with Joe Rogan in my book.
Okay, so thank you. So back to the question about the collective. Can you start off by kind of talking about that?
Sure. Since the beginning of my career, I've been just kind of experimenting. My career started in 2013. I've just been experimenting with like how to build business models around art and artists, and how to work with artists in different ways. And that took the form of building a studio where I rented out studio space to artists, only to find out that artists are terrible tenants, and I shouldn't be renting studio space to artists because it's really hard to make sure that they pay on time. To building a mural agency and going out and facilitating deals with brands, and then hiring muralists that are really capable and cool to go out and execute those murals for me. And most recently, because of COVID, I started to facilitate workshops on Zoom, and that started in May. And they were these collaborative month-long art making experiences with members of my community. And through that, I realized a couple things. there's a lot of commonalities between artists online that you don't really discover until you start talking to each other. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're lonely and it's hard to have a routine when you're a sole operator, and we all kind of have the same questions around vendors and production and how to negotiate with galleries. And so we started to build this community, and through this community I started to meet really talented, interesting artists, and realized that we all kind of wanted to do these interesting global distributed projects. And so now we've got a collective of artists who are members of the community, participating in the community, but also participating in the collective in producing projects. And those projects take place in two forms. On one hand, I might do PR or advise a project that an artist is doing under their own brand. Or another way, I might come up with an idea, enlist my community to operate in the shadows to enable the most famous artists to execute on those types of campaigns. And what I was alluding to in the interview and so far with this monolith is the latter, which is the community is out there helping me propagate this myth that the monolith is from aliens.
Well, there are like multiple myths, right? You know, so like one myth is that the monolith is from aliens. Another myth is, who made it? And, your kind of insertion into the dialogue was like super genius because, David's Warner Gallery, and, I love those guys. They used Instagram also to put up an image of a John McCracken because originally people thought, maybe it was a McCracken. Not anyone who looked at it closely, because of course you could see the seams and the screws, and anyone who knows about McCracken knows about the just pristine nature of the surface. But they also kind of jumped into the mix and showed a sculpture that is in their 20th Street gallery. So I've been thinking about like kind of the whole copycat phenomena in popular culture, but then also the idea of like when something good happens, like oftentimes no one claims it, and then when something bad happens, sometimes lots of people claim it, right? So like if there's a terrorist act, right, people are like, oh, I did it, or he did it, or she did it, or they did it, right? So I wonder what you think about those, like that kind of spectrum of associations also.
Sure. So I think Werner had to backpedal a bit because of some of the implications related to the ecological destruction as a result of the monolith. And that's been a point of contention as I talk to all sorts of folks on both the Go Monolith and this monolith sucks side of things. I think there's something to learn about these like global art events that happen each year. If we look back 2 years, we had the Banksy shredding incident. If we look back last year, we had Mauricio Catalan's banana at Art Basel. What I think the through line in all of these moments is that they're easily replicable, and that's the essence of a meme. So they're art activities that become meme-like. So it's almost counterintuitive to the artist, which is someone that does something that no one else can do and is unique to them. In fact, these art moments were produced to elicit mimic behavior, and as a result spread online. And so when I look at the banana, it got duplicated 1,000 times because people could do it. When I looked at the first instantiation of the monolith, I thought to myself, people are going to duplicate this. The original author, whether that's my community, John McCracken, aliens, whatever, is likely not going to take credit because of the illegal nature of the first monolith. So knowing that, I had to think about what is the headline that I could produce that inserts me directly into the discussion, and who's the appropriate media outlet to do so. And the headline I thought up is, well, a way to exert my authority would be to sell monoliths. To produce monoliths, demonstrate that I have produced monoliths, and sell monoliths, and thereby start a dialogue around, well, is this the guy that did it? And that turns out it worked really well. The second layer of that was thinking about who will actually represent this story and cause it to spread, and who can I don't want to say this word, but troll a bit. And I thought about the tech industry. So I thought about the absurdity of like software as a service and the obsession with like large figures when dealing with tech acquisitions and funding announcements. And I thought, well, what if I price the monolith at a cool $45,000? It's literally sheets of metal. There's also a hidden Easter egg around Trump and the 45th president in there.
Nice.
And then
I didn't
finally,
get that.
position it as monoliths as a service, which is a piss take on the whole tech world. And in doing so, Mashable bit. And Mashable wrote the first story. And to their credit, were very straightforward about the fact that I had not yet fully claimed responsibility. But because I was able to construct enough digital artifacts that told a narrative that the press wanted so desperately to break, I became the guy.
Yeah.
Without any real evidence.
Well, and that's what was so interesting yesterday, right? And it gets back to this idea of art and that people think there's some kind of it to get, and that's what makes people frustrated because and you played right into that notion of is this like the Emperor's New Clothes? Are there things that we should know about? Like, are we being made fun of? What is he saying? And then also the news cycle where people just want to check a box, like, okay, that's the answer for this, so we can put that to the side so we can go on to the next thing. So the fact that these monoliths keep showing up in these different places and the story has then a life of its own, really, it has this organic nature that then your insertion into it just sent it like additionally propagating, making it like more interesting and more confusing and more unknowable and more hilarious.
Yeah, it's certainly been interesting watching the Google alerts for the most famous artist and monolith come in. It's been covered everywhere from Thailand to Russia to South Africa. It's everywhere. And every 15 minutes, I get someone reaching out saying, I'd like to install a monolith. And I say, go do it then.
Yeah, right?
Like, just do it. You're going to get press. You're going to have your 15 minutes of fame because this is the art moment of this year. And what I guess one hypothesis I have is that we're going to see more of these art moments at a more rapid cadence because of the internet's growth and scale.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that would be amazing. I think that maybe slightly optimistic, right? Because in general, I think people don't like art. So every once in a while when art, they say they do, but actually if you kind of dig down, like a lot of people have I don't know, like a disdain for art, So when art kind of jumps the shark or whatever, and we get the Catalan banana or even, the America piece, which was the golden toilet at the Guggenheim bathroom, which then when President Trump wanted a Van Gogh for the White House, Nancy Spector, who was then the chief curator at the Guggenheim, denied the loan of the Van Gogh, but offered the Catalan toilet called America. So there are these kind of trolling opportunities of putting art kind of into the popular culture. But when it works, just kind of endemically, it's so exciting. So maybe it will happen more, but anyway, anything that gets people talking about art around the dinner table and cross generationally, I think is awesome. So
Absolutely.
So have any of the $45,000 monoliths been sold yet?
So one has been acquired.
Awesome.
It is being installed this week at a movie ranch in Southern California, and the others are on reserve, as they say in the fine art world.
Yeah. Are you taking second reserves and tertiary reserves?
I think what we're going to end up doing is bringing one to auction at some point. And if anyone out there is interested in helping us facilitate that, we'll probably bring one to auction early next year. We're also experimenting with slightly smaller monoliths we're calling mini monis to make the object accessible. And the goal of selling these monoliths is to create resources for our studio so that we can empower our team to do more and more interesting and more global projects. So there has been some criticism around monetizing this activity, but at the end of the day, I'm in the business of art and I have to sell art to survive.
Yeah. So the price of the price of the edition of three, and I love that there are three of the let's call them like large scale monoliths, and then of course there 33 or 333 of the mini monis.
So there's 333 of the mini monis
Okay, and they
at
cost
$3,333.33 each.
right,
Just because the aliens, you know,
of
we wanted to
course.
play around with the pricing. We're working on like the packaging, the rendering. We're going to take pre-orders. I'm working with an art manufacturing studio to actually produce like high quality, museum quality art objects for this, and we'll pre-sell them and deliver them to whoever wants one.
Okay, so the large scale monoliths, uh, the $45,000 price tag comes also, it includes the installation, right? Because like one of the things that's been so interesting and sort of like a sub story to this whole primary story is their placement, right? And so like where they're showing up and how they interact with the landscape and what they reflect. So the installation is important, right?
Absolutely, and that will be a responsibility of me and other team members to make sure that the object is installed in a way that most glorifies it and also coordinates with the alien's original intentions.
Okay, so talk about, so with conceptual art and off land art or wall art or, you know, like specifically like a Lewitt, right? It comes with a certificate of authenticity. And so it's as much about like having the paper that shows that it is what it is as it is about the actual object or what's painted on the wall or whatnot. So are you using certificates of authenticity with the monoliths that you're distributing as well?
Yeah, years ago I met a guy called Robert Norton, and he runs a company called VerisArt, and I've been using VerisArt to produce certificates of authenticity for my work. Primarily, my work is upcycling flea market paintings. For example, this painting was bought for, I think, $25 at a flea market in Los Angeles, and then we put a cause on top of it because then it's contemporary and relevant, and perceived as valuable. So we do that at a large scale, and we're now doing it at a large scale where I'm not the sole hand that makes the works. The works are sometimes bought in Mexico City, produced by a collective member in Mexico City, sold on our website referencing that artist. And the only way to verify the authenticity is to use a digital certificate of authenticity. And those certificates are actually registered on the blockchain.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering if blockchain was going to come up. You know that I get like super bored about like the blockchain connection, but this actually makes sense.
I'm not talking about NFTs. I'm just talking about a way to verify certificates for our now distributed studio producing these upcycled flea market works and now monoliths.
Okay, cool. Talk about the mini monis. How big are they? And like where do they get placed? And are they interior pieces or exterior pieces? Again, because of the reflective nature of the original one and the alien's intentions too.
So I've been collaborating with a number of artists in the studio on kind of how to make this the most interesting object we can, and we're contemplating delivering the object with a base and some dirt. So it'd be so you'd be able to actually put the dirt down, and you might be able to put it on your desk with a mound of dirt around it, or you could install it outside. They'll be the same material as the large monoliths, but they'll be metal, but much smaller. We're aiming for 33 inches tall, which is not a small object. We're kind of taking the tech approach. So I'm a former tech entrepreneur, and it's all about like customer validation and like lean startup and learning and speaking with your customers. So if there's not enough demand around 33-inch larger, more expensive objects, we're gonna shrink them down and make them more affordable and move towards the toy market. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to create resources for our. This is my dog, by the way.
Hi.
This is Buddy.
Hey, buddy. Okay, so I want to actually circle back to the nomenclature of the most famous artist and where you came up with that and the kind of searchability of that. And I know you also have merchandise on your site which references the algorithm. So
sure. So I'm a former tech entrepreneur, built my career creating ad tech companies, serving ads and figuring out how to sell people things online. When I stepped out of my role as an ad tech executive, I thought about starting a company for myself. And when I started to think about what is the perfect product to sell, I thought of art, largely because it comes with a story, and therefore every purchaser becomes a sales agent for you. There's no real price ceiling to it. And a few other factors led me to think that art was the right object to sell or right business to build. So I Googled who is the most famous artist. And I found a lot of people that referenced themselves with that adjective, but no one had claimed the noun. And so I claimed the noun, knowing that if I created enough relevance around the URL, I would register as the most famous artist when you type into Google the most famous artist. And that would be a good shtick for my conceptual art practice. What's really interesting is every one of these projects we create link back to our website, which create backlinks in the SEO world, which reinforce the strength of the domain. So every project we produce, part of my work product is actually an Excel spreadsheet with all of the press hits, estimations around the impressions generated, and then at the end of the day, we're going to try to build a self-sustaining enterprise that continues to generate impressions and growth so that we truly become the most famous artist. And that might require AI and machine learning and 3D printing, but wouldn't it be cool if the most famous artist became an institution that lived long beyond me and continued to maintain that title?
So two of my favorite parts of all of these exchanges so far have been in your interview, unaired interview with NBC yesterday, where whoever was interviewing you, he was off screen, which was also really great. He kept saying like, okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. And it was so clear like that he didn't get it. And then when you and I were texting earlier today and you said like, you know what I'm doing, right? And I was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't get it. Like I'm here to say I didn't do the monolith, but I did not do the monolith.
So like both and neither nor, right?
Yeah, and
So
that's one
it's
of
everything.
the dichotomy is what drives a lot of people's art practices, the here and there. And so I am both the originator and the guy that's just capitalizing on it as a result of the artifacts that were created to seed the story, which propagated the myth.
Yeah. Well, so I did an earlier podcast with a member of the Gorilla Girls, and I was talking about it with my like my kids the other night, and they said like, "Oh, well, you're a Gorilla Girl, right?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And they're like, "But you couldn't tell us if you were, right?" And I was like, "Well, no, I couldn't tell you if I was, but I'm not." And they're like, "But you are." And then I said, "Well, actually, in the podcast, we talked about the fact that like everyone is as well as everyone is not." So it's like if you want to be, then you can be. And that's like one of the amazing and surprising things about the art world, right? Is that people think it's a super exclusive, like unavailable, elite circumstance, but it's not. Almost everything's free. You can go to galleries, there are always free days, free hours at museums. And it's basically a secret society that all you have to do to be a member of is like to raise your hand and say like, hey, I'm interested in that. And part of the projects that you're doing and these ways of putting art in front of like a broad audience, it creates opportunities to bring that up. Like, hey, anyone can be whoever they want to be within this space too.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very much operating along the lines of a more democratic, open art world, largely because I wasn't accepted by the art world and still am not really accepted by the art world as a viable artist, despite having a sustainable career and a lot of attention around my practice.
And being the most famous artist.
Yeah, I even got it tattooed on my arm.
Is that your handwriting?
It is my handwriting, yeah.
Okay. So what's been your favorite part of this part of the practice so far? Like the monolith, let's call it like the Monolith Series.
Sure. I think so we have a private members community, and We have a dialogue going on inside of that members community. And I think the excitement and the ideas coming out of the community as a result of this act is the most exciting part. It's like putting gasoline on a fire. The fire was already going, but doing this act with a small group of folks from my community in kind of a secretive way, but then including the entire community in the celebration of the act, turns into more creative ideas that will then turn into more creative acts. And so that to me has been the most exciting part. The getting every single press outlet under the sun to reach out and ask for a statement, not so interesting anymore. I mean, tomorrow I'm probably going to turn off my phone because I feel like the Monolith story is over.
Yeah.
It's now time to move on to whatever's next.
Well, that's actually the next thing I was going to say is, we're used to a 24-hour news cycle, right? And so this story has now had like multiple peaks to it. And that's been like kind of surprising too. And maybe that's been kind of the fun part of it also is, that element of like surprise or curiosity or, like a kind of pretty broad audience probably at this point being interested in like the absurdity of it. So.
Yeah, my job is done because if you Google monolith artist, guess who you find?
Right. Okay, so what is next? What are you guys working on?
I briefly alluded to this idea of upcycling paintings around the globe. I'm really excited about the idea of having a studio member in every major city going to flea markets and buying things that would otherwise end up in the trash and turning them into contemporary art. And the unit economics are they're really high margin, even though the works are affordable. So we sell the works around $1,000 and they cost around $30 to produce. And the revenue share with the community is 75% to community member, 25% to the studio itself. So what we've done is we've built this studio that allows people to make work for the business, grow the business, but make income on the side. And that feels like this really sustainable, cool, interesting model on a number of fronts. And so growing that and scaling that is kind of the next thing we're interested in.
It also relates back to the monolith in a really interesting way, which is that, all of those paintings and the monoliths, right, they were all made by someone. And, whoever made them is basically invisible, or anonymous, or forgotten, or doesn't want to be identified. And so it's kind of recapturing something that was created from a place of like intention as art, and then giving it this new life, right? And also connecting it to this broader, a broader connectivity of people who care about something in common.
Which is also kind of a reference to the internet, which is one big Xerox machine, and a reference to the press and media, which quite literally just keep duplicating and duplicating and duplicating the original story from Mashable with these slight morphs and changes that ultimately end up in a telephone game where you can't even tell what the truth is 5, 10, 20 articles later.
Yeah. Okay. Anything I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about?
No, this was super fun, and I hope that we had a good chat. Will you save this chat and so that I can reshare it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll look forward to a longer conversation on the podcast, but glad to see you. And thanks for saying yes. This was super fun.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.